Yeah, combine it
Yeah,
and
like clip
yeah, edit
up,
it out. Yeah, if I really wanted to do that. I never
just
do that though. I just
edit out the part where we had a.
yeah. I should definitely do that. I'm gonna do that. But I'm gonna still keep it separate too. I'm gonna do both. All right,
Oh,
but yeah, guys, welcome back to our YouTube channels, Uplift past Crossroads, and then Justin's YouTube channel, Chaplain's Logs. So we're finishing. We're going back talking about Jessica M. Keady's writing. So Uplift past Crossroads, Chaplain's Logs, and so for today's video, we already did part one of the video talking about just the introduction of talking about rape culture, discourse, and female impurity, Genesis 34 as a case study. So this chapter that Jessica M. Keady wrote in this book titled "Rape Culture and Gender Violence and Religion: Biblical Perspectives" is edited by Caroline Blyth, Emily Colgan, and Katie B. Edwards. All right. I suck with summaries. Justin's way better at summaries from our first videos. But we're just talking about Genesis 34, and Jessica and Katie talking about how basically rape cultures and purity cultures, just our different cultures in our society. So our societal norms can influence, our interpretations or readings on scripture, right? And then not only that, it could reinforce certain type of patriarchal ideas or norms, and it can lead to ramifications that negatively impact people who've been victimized by gender violence or
mhm.
anything like that, right? So I think that was a good summary. Like,
Yeah.
all right, so let's keep on going. All right, so I'm gonna go where we left off. Yeah, Justin, I didn't ask you if you want to say anything with what I read before when the
Yeah.
video was cut off. This part, or I'll just keep going because this point's reiterated in the next. I think in the next two slides.
Yeah. I'm
Um,
trying to think because I was saying something before we had to cut the video off. Let me just read. Yeah.
okay.
Um. Yeah, and I do like what you were saying, and I think I was saying it too. Like before we recontextualize the scripture that we're reading, the narrator does like have a lot of the narrator does give like a lot of weights to how we view something. And unfortunately, like in the cultures throughout the Old Testament and even cultures nowadays, like we do kind of minimize what the what the rapee or like the woman goes through as well. And like that happens with King David's daughter, that happens with Dinah. You just don't get to see their perspective, unfortunately. Like you see Levi and Simeon's reaction. You see her father's reaction. You see like the father of the prince's reaction, but you never like see the woman's reaction, unfortunately. And that can like really, yeah, as I said, it just minimizes like what they went through. And I think we do that in today's culture as well, in which we find ways to victimize the rapee, to like say to like make it more about their purity than about like the emotional or physical abuse that they went through. So yeah, I feel like you did a good job summarizing that part.
Yeah, yeah, I really like what Keady said about like silencing the victims of rape or silencing women who are
Mm.
oppressed or even the marginalized, like because in different cultures, right, in our society, and when I say cultures, I'm talking about party culture, rape culture, purity culture, right? So we got different types of cultures going on, and all of them are trying to reinforce some type of harm on victims and uplift certain type of evils, right, for example, or ways of living that benefit men, for example, like which that's what benefits because patriarchal society, right? So on page 78, this is what Jessica M. Keady says. Man, that is really tiny. That sucks. All right, let me make it bigger. All right, so page 78, Dinah said, Jessica M. Keady says this: Dinah's life and her sexual integrity are treated as objects to be negotiated and exchanged among men. So it's not just Dinah; it's the women too, the Shechemite women, because Simeon and Levi went to slaughter the men, and then they got the women and the children and the men's possessions that were, the men that were circumcised, and they fooled the circumcising themselves, right? So yeah, so the women are treated in well, the men get to do what they please and what they want with the women, and the women just gotta take it in this narrative in the Bible a lot of times. So and still Dinah is rendered silent by the narrator. So the even the narrator silences Dinah. Like, her thoughts about her sexual assault and the perspective of marriage to her rapist completely omitted from the text. So it's omitted from the text. So like we don't know what Dinah thought about her experience. We don't get what, not even just Dinah. We don't get what the women of Jacob's household think, which that's what really surprises me, Justin. I've never heard in a million years that Jacob had daughters, like until seminary school. That's when I first heard about it.
Mm,
Like we only hear about the 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob's children, sons. We
yeah,
never hear about the women, which Dinah was one of the daughters of Jacob. So
right.
yeah, like what was the daughter's thoughts? Dinah's sisters. What was Leah's thought about what happened to Dinah, or even Rachel, the auntie, right? Yeah, Rachel and Leah. Yeah, so and who else like that Jacob was married to that was a woman, right? So we don't hear none of their thoughts or their experiences, right? And that's crazy. Like, like this is how the women are treated. Like, and then look at this. This is on page 75. Dinah's experience of this encounter is never articulated in the narrative. Rather, we hear only the voices and responses of male characters: her father, her brother, and her rapist. So they dictate the story. They dictate the tale. All right, that is crazy. All right. And I'm gonna read some other excerpts from the book. And as you can see, I don't know if you guys can tell, I'm having technical difficulties again, so I just gotta fight through it. So yeah, let me read this part. So after Hamar and Shechem, the brothers took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The use and echo of the verb, I don't know how to say that word, the LQH one. That's a Hebrew word. In verse 2 and verse 26 is significant as the reader can trace the aggression inherent within the narrative from these two pivotal moments. When Dinah is first taken by Shechem, and then when she is taken back her her by her brothers. So she's taken by men, right? And the whole entire time of the narrative. And going where the men tell her to go, right? So again, her
Mm,
silence in this narrative is abusive. What she herself thought about the events around these takings is left unspoken. Had she been given the opportunity to write a letter and read it out to Shechem, what would it have said? How would she have described the impact of this rape and abduction on her literary life? Yet, like so many survivors of sexual violence, Dinah's voice in her narrative is silenced and ignored. So that's what I really like about this whole entire chapter that Jessica M. Keady wrote. Like she really paints a picture of what it's like to be raped and what it's like for victims of rape. Like what's their reality looks like because life still goes on after the rape. So like, you know, how's your voice after being raped? Right? Do you feel
mm,
like you don't have a voice? And she really painted a good picture in the chapter talking about how like when a person's raped, like the rapist continually tells the victim, like, shut up, like you're not allowed to talk, like, I'm the one in power. So they make the victim feel as if they have no voice, like nobody wants to hear what you have to say, nobody will believe what you have to say, and nobody will take serious what you have to say, right? Because I'm the one with power. I'm the one that people want to listen to, not you. So like, what's the point of even speaking up when you've been raped? Because if you have that thought process, so she painted a good picture of what that's like in a life of Dinah, right? Because she literally, Keady did a good job of painting a picture and showing using the Hebrew words. I'm gonna read it using the Hebrew words of like proving that she was raped and taken and abused and stuff like that. Justin, you have anything, or you want me to read that part real quick?
yeah. I do like how. Yeah, I do like how you were trying to say what Kitty was getting at, in which the women really do. Yeah, the women's voice really is kind of minimized in like the this scripture, and as we said before in other scripture, and I think that parallels a lot of what what kind of happens today as well. Um, and I think that's because there's like such similarities. There, like honestly, there's not a lot of similarities as far as culture goes. Like God's laws are timeless, and you can kind of see that a lot. But the culture that goes throughout the Old Testament is very different from ours. But the fact that women's voices are kind of underscored is a parallel that happens now and back then. I think we should pay like very close attention to it.
Yeah, yeah. I meant to ask you earlier. I'm gonna
Mhm.
go back to it, but like, what do you think it means when they say contextualizing a text or contextuality of a text? Like, um,
Ooh,
because like I googled it, but I think it's so much deeper than what Google says. Contextual, yeah, contextual interpretation, synonym. So it says to include elucidation, explan- explanation, analysis, understanding on a specific setting. So it's talking
mm,
about the context of a setting,
right,
right? And it supposedly is supposed to be contextualizing a text, like it's supposed to be, talking about the setting of the actual biblical account that you're in, like
right.
what it actually looked like. And
Hmm.
like honestly, like one of the weaknesses I saw with Keady's reading and her writing, it's not like Bechtel. Like honestly, Bechtel did a better job of contextualizing the text than Keady. Like, and I say that because like with Keady, when she contextualizes the text, she uses and focuses specifically on like the purity cultures, like or the purity culture and the rape culture, and focusing on gender violence and so she focuses in on those type of things. She doesn't focus in on what was the honor like, like you were
Hmm.
mentioning, like men over women's feelings and women's lives, like so men, family, even family honor over women and what women feel, and women treating women how they should be treated, fairly and stuff like that, like, and
Mm,
so everything's over women, everything's more important than women, and that's
mm,
awful, like, like, so that
yeah,
was her focus. But like with Bechtel, she focused on the characters, like every character, and she gave them a voice, like,
mm,
so like we don't think too much about Shechem and Hamar, really. Like we see them as villains when we
right,
on the traditional reading of Genesis 34. But like with Bechtel, she sees them as heroes. Honestly, like the only villains in the story to her is Simeon and Levi. But
right.
yeah, the heroes are Jacob, Hamar, Shechem, Dinah, because they are about bonding and bringing people together
Yeah,
and unity. Like I want to read what she said too, because like it was crazy.
yeah. Bethel had such a weird perspective. She made a lot of assumptions on, like she is right that back then they were more community driven. Like the
Yeah,
US and Western culture in general are very individualistic, which is actually very different from like even other countries in the modern world. But she was saying because they were community driven, it's like that culture would have raised women up as they would have raised women up as like the pinnacle of their society, and having like producing family would be like seen as like a great task for them, which it should be. They should be lifted up for like the hardships they have to go through with like childbirth and being a mom and being a wife. But that's I don't think that's how they saw it like at all. Like she just made an assumption that, oh, since they're in a community, the women must be treated right. But that's not
yeah,
that doesn't mean anything. They
yeah,
could treat women however they want.
yeah. Yeah, we're gonna talk about Bechtel a little later. I ain't gonna spoil it yet, but let me
Yeah,
finish
sorry. We're
saying,
talking about a new author, I guess.
right. Let me finish talking about what Keady wrote. So this is just some excerpts from her work. So this is page 78 on chapter 5 of that book, whatever the book's called. You guys just watch the beginning of the video. Rape culture, gender violence, and religion. Yeah, that book. Even though y'all can't really see it. Yeah. All right. So Jacob expresses disapproval at his son's actions. They retort by asking their father, should our sister be treated like a prostitute? So Zina, or something like that in the Hebrew language. Exactly what they meant by this question is unclear. In the Hebrew Bible, a prostitute was understood to be a woman whose sexuality remained under her own control rather than her male kin. So I like how she pointed that out. That was a great job of contextualizing the text right there. All right. So Dinah's brother's words here may therefore suggest the real crime that took place in verse 2 was not Dinah's bodily violation, but rather Shechem's dishonorable act of taking her virginity without first seeking her father's consent. And thus, Genesis 34 ends, Dinah is still silent, like many rape survivors who feel they can never share their experience with anyone, even family and members and friends. Dinah, too, is denied the opportunity to give voice to her own experience of sexual violence. And that's the narrative, the biblical account doing this. But that's crazy to me. The Bible's doing it, right? So, like, the brothers are not even mad that she was raped. They're mad that it put their family in this situation. It made the family look bad. It made the men look bad because what brought the family honor in biblical time period was the men protecting their daughters or their sisters' purity, right? In the family, right? Because as soon as that's taken away, what do they have? Like, what does a woman have? Like in that time period, nothing. Like because your virginity's gone, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and so they look at you as defiled, broken, messed up. Oh yeah, that's good. So we, if we go back up, like, and this is what I really want to say earlier in the video. I don't know if I'm gonna find it. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna find it, man, because I got so much to read. But yeah, but like they see the women as damaged goods, defiled, like not fit for use anymore once they
Yeah.
lose their virginity. So like this talks about the purity culture, which is the problem. Like that describes the purity culture. Like a woman's worth is defined by, you know, their sexuality. Like how much men have you slept with? That's another way of looking at it too. Like, you know, the less men you slept with, the more precious you are, the more valuable you are, right? Like, and so like that's some misconceptions. Yeah, let me read some of this stuff because I haven't even read this yet. All right, so the main scholarly another main scholarly debate, you know, cultural narratives of female purity. So another key aspect of Keady's debate involves the concept of female purity and how it is utilized to control and define women's roles within a society. She examines the implications, so the ramifications of purity discourse in the context of the narrative, so Genesis 34, arguing that it often leads to victim blaming and reinforces patriarchal values that prioritize male honor over female autonomy. Oh yeah, this is getting good. All right, yeah, here it goes again. All right, so E.J. Graff argues that, and so this is on page 74 and page 71 of Jessica Keady's work. So this is her saying this. So E.J. Graff, and so this is a misconception surrounding Dinah's rape as well that we all have when we look at the Genesis 34 in traditional interpretation, what's always being said about it. So E.J. Graff argues that understanding rape as primarily a sexual violation places the burden on women to protect their bodies' purities. Subsequently, public perceptions of sexual assault typically focus on women in her actions. Was she drunk? What was she wearing? Did she flirt with her attacker? Was she asking for it? Wow. So Dinah's failure to guard adequately her own sexual boundaries and thus preserve her purity rendered her culpable for her own violations. So that's how
Mm.
some people interpret this. Literally in church settings, they say, you know, just she put herself in this situation. And even Lynn Bechtel said it. She said that Dinah went out. That
Yeah.
literally said in the first verse, it says she went out. So she sought it. So she, but like if you read verse 1 too, it also says that she was going to see the women in the land. Like it didn't say she was going to see Shechem. So
Mm.
like, but like, yeah, she put herself in that situation because she went out. Like, did her dad say she can go out, stuff like that? Like, so like that's where the gray area hits. Like, but that's where again, like she said, like if you're not careful, you're just reinforcing the same harm that rape victims have to endure. Like, you're just saying, like, and we're talking about in a purity culture sense, like, So yeah, Justin, I'll let you say what you want to say. If you had any,
Yeah, and I think yeah, I was trying to read some commentary for that as well, and it's yeah, I think there was some evidence that showed that maybe she got caught up, like maybe she wasn't like physically forcibly raped, but she was still kind of caught off guard at least. And you had like a very impressionable woman. I feel like as a man, like, or as like any godly man, they should take responsibility for like any woman that they bed or any woman that they're like leading or misleading in this case.
Mhm.
And it definitely at least has the context that even if there wasn't physical force, there could have been like there could have been emotional pressure into the situation or something like that. And even Jacob, I think Beckel was trying to justify of like, oh, Jacob was fine with it because he talked to
Tamar.
Shechem, yeah, Hechem, and like tried to compromise, or I don't know. But it's like it sounded like Jacob was more upset with Simeon and Levi's actions, not because he thought they were wrong, but because of like the reaction other nations could have had on them, which could be evidence that Jacob didn't like what physically happened to Dinah either, or that Jacob at least believed that Dinah was violated in some way. And like, I don't know, it's crazy to me that I think it is good to explore different avenues or different ways of thinking, but that's also very dangerous because then you could like trivialize someone's emotions. And this can come from a personal or like a personal level or a literary level. Like if you're talking to someone who's been through a situation, there's such a fine line of like acknowledging the feelings that they have or like finding out how much blame to put on them.
Yeah.
I think like every situation, and maybe this is comes from my married life, even if it's the other person's fault, you can always ask yourself, like, how did I contribute to that situation now? And it's possible that Dinah might have contributed something to that situation as well. I've read some commentary that said that as an impressionable woman, she should not have been like going around the land by herself. I don't know. I wasn't there. They don't give, again, they don't give Dinah much of a voice, so we do not know. But at the same time, it's like, why are you victimizing her as well? Like, if someone went through such a traumatic event, the first thing you do is not going to be like, well, you shouldn't have done that. Like, I can tell you, like, if my wife came to me with like a problem, I'm not going to correct her on like, oh, you could have done this to avoid the situation. No, that's like, well, I've done that before, to be fair, and it does not work out, by the way. So I've learned that it's like on personal, like a personal. I ca- I want to stick from a literary view, but I feel myself gravitating towards like on a personal emotional level as well. Like when you interact with people like rape victims or anything like that, like understand their feelings as well. Like Dinah still was probably very emotionally impressionable, and I think we need to acknowledge that. I think a lot of times, and I think what Bechtel does that Katie is trying to save her from is a lot of times when we read characters in the Bible, we don't treat them as people. We treat them as like literary devices or a means to an end or something to learn a lesson from. Like, oh, you shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. Something I really like about the Chosen series. I can't remember if Sean has watched the whole series,
No, not the
but
whole.
oh man, yeah, you need to. We need to talk about that show. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But the best thing they probably did with that is they humanized the disciples, because it's so, man. I remember so many Bible studies where we talk we pretty much say, wow, uh this disciple was dumb, or doubting Thomas is forever known as doubting Thomas because he doubted like once. But like watching the show, you kind of remember like, oh, these were real people. Same with Dinah. even if, and that's a big if because I don't know, even if like she had some contribution to like what happened to her, it's like we have to remember like this was a young impressionable lady, and like she was scarred from, I'd imagine she was scarred from this experience. So I think that's like always important to remember. Sorry, I feel like I got away from like my original point and got
No,
more
you good.
emotional about it.
We need to go there, like, like, and break it down and give our thoughts, like, for
Yeah,
this assignment. Oh my gosh, this font is awful. But yeah, Justin, when you were talking, like,
yeah, that's
this is
great.
my favorite part of her work. So it's on page 68. So she's talking about her approach of like viewing Genesis 34, and this is what she says. She says, I can. So her goal is to open up the text. So that's a solution. Anytime we're reading a rape account, a rape narrative, or just a text in the Bible that really something awful is happening to a woman, like, you need to open up the text and really see what needs to be seen with that text. So watch this. She says, I consider the relationship between defilement, rape, and violence in Genesis 34. So defilement, so purity culture, right? Women, that are raped, they're useless now. That's awful. That
Yeah.
what that's literally what some people think.
We equate like a woman's purity to her worth, and that's something wrong with that.
Right. So drawing on contemporary discourses, so modern day discourses, conversations, how people talk, embedded in rape and purity cultures. Like, so rape and purity cultures discourses are literally affecting our dialogue, even in a church setting, even when we're looking at Bible text. So by so doing, I seek to encourage readers and interpreters to perform an act of political resistance to biblical ideologies that sustain contemporary rape and purity cultures, particularly those pertaining to female sexuality and purity, and to assess the possible significance that such ideologies have for biblical readers today. As Sadie Gavitt explains, recognizing rape in biblical text opens up the text beyond the bounds set thousands of years ago and invites translators to be more than passive recipients of ancient words and to do more than simply reinscribe the cultural norms of these past societies onto the modern stage. Right? I'm gonna read this part too. So as Gavitt demonstrates, recognizing rape. So this is when we see a rape account, recognize it. Don't sweep it under the rug. Don't ignore it. Right? Like Lyn Bechtel, right? So recognizing rape in biblical narrative opens the text and its literary figures, allowing readers, teachers, and educators to question and query the social and gender roles of these ancient societies in relation to their own. I have used Genesis 34 as a case study to demonstrate the importance of reading biblical rape narratives in a wider framework that takes seriously the damaging discourses of sexual violence expressed therein. In modern contexts, the narrative of Dinah in Genesis 34 touches on larger issues surrounding rape, female purity, sexuality, and the status of women in biblical texts. These issues need to be read, written about, taught, and understood within a framework that takes into consideration. So consider the rape and purity cultures, which pervade so many of our contemporary contexts, right? And so, yeah, so she believes that Dinah was raped. There has been, and she says this on page 74, right? There has been and continues to be disagreement as to whether Dinah is raped in the biblical narrative. Scholars have suggested a range of possibilities with regard to the relationship between Dinah and Shechem, from rape, statutory rape, abduction, marriage, to seduction, and even a romantic love. So that's what Lyn Bechtel thinks, and I'm going to say some more on that. So she says, I'm inclined to agree with scholars who argue that Dinah was raped by Shechem. The strongest evidence in favor of this reading is, in my mind, the biblical Hebrew usage and ordering of three verbs. So here goes the three Hebrew verbs right here, the NH, SQB, and LQH, used to describe Shechem's, I just had technical problems again, used to describe Shechem's actions towards Dinah in verse 2. Some of all of these verbs are likewise found in biblical narratives that unequivocally denote gender violence, most significantly the rape of Tamar and the gain rate of the Levite concubine. So I need to send you that, Justin. That's the one. Judges 19.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says Judges 19 something. 25, right? And 25. Chapter 20, verse 5. Yeah. All right, and so I'm gonna read verse 2. So Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the chief of the country, saw her and took her and lay with her and disgraced her. So that's Genesis 34:2, and that's from the contemporary Torah, right? I couldn't find any other version on the Bible app I was using. And yeah, so here goes another way of looking at the same Hebrew words that we saw, three words. Anytime it's used, it's not good. So they put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword, took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. So the word took is there again in Hebrew. So in relation to Genesis 2, however, it is the verb SQB, particularly significant that SQB is directly preceded by the verb LQH. Shechem took Dinah and lay with her. In other Hebrew biblical texts, when SQB is presented by a verb of seizure, SHZQ to seize, or TPS to capture or lay hold of, it typically depicts a scenario or of coercive and aggressive sex, the woman having been forced or seized prior to the sexual act of occurring. There's a sense then that this strategic use of the verb in Genesis 34 is referring to illicit, violent, and sexual encounter, especially of sexual act is described as defiling, right? So I think I read this part already. Yeah, I did. All right.
I do like how let me think. Bechtel also tried to use Hebrew to explain like how this might not have been rape, how it was more consensual. But it was weird because the words in Hebrew still meant like defilement or
Yeah,
like force, like verbs that basically meant forced. So I'm glad that Keady used the same logic to explain. Yeah, no, this is most likely rape.
right.
No, it was just weird. Anyway, I digress. I thought it was weird that she explained the Hebrew words meant like these degrading things, but say, oh no, it wasn't rape.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna say some stuff about Lynn Bechtel real quick too. All right, so just so you guys get a taste for Lynn Bechtel and where she's coming from. So this is a good synopsis of what her writing she was trying to convey in her work. What was her work called? It's not even worth mentioning honestly, but I'm gonna go ahead and mention it. Um, yeah, so this was her work right here. What if Dinah is not raped? Genesis 34 is an article. And honestly, I enjoyed reading it only because it completely went against Keady's reading, so it contradicted anything Keady said, and it just gave you a different perspective on Genesis 34, which there's nothing wrong with that because it actually gave, like we talked about in the video before, Dinah some agency, which that's rare. Like, so it really gave Dinah a voice and freedom, which she doesn't have in this text in the traditional reading sense. So this is on page 31 of Lynn Bechtel's work. She said the emphasis in the text on wanting to get acquainted, nonviolent, nonviolent giving and taking, bonding, professing love, honoring, cooperating cannot be ignored. So to her, she thinks that if this is a love account, honor is happening between Hamar, Shechem, Jacob, and Dinah. Like all of them are working together and cooperating with each other, right? To bond their cultures, to bond their nations, right? It's a give and take going on between Hamar, between Shechem and Dinah. Like so, true love, give and take, right? And it's non-violent, right? So throughout the text, there's no indication that Dinah is raped. So that's literally what she believes. That's her thesis statement, right? The description of Shechem's behavior and attitude does not fit that of a rapist. It is not the correct psychological context for rape. And I want to talk about that again. Like out of all the stuff that she said, that was the most craziest part to me, yeah, it's right here. So Lyn Bechtel, for example, argues that Shechem did not rape Dinah because sociological studies reveal that rapists feel hostility and hatred towards their victims, not love. Like that statement makes no sense to me. Like, and Justin, we talked about that last time. Um, rapists feel hostility and hatred towards the victim, not love. Like, are you kidding me? How do you know what a rapist feel? You're not a rapist. Like, and
Yeah,
I don't care
that's
what you
that's
said. Yeah,
yeah. She was going into like this big psychological thing of like rapists rape because they feel an inferiority or want to be in control. Which yeah, I'm sure like there's some level of wanting to be in control there, but I feel like it's of course I'm not a rapist either, so I don't know. But I feel like it would be like physical urges or like a sinful nature or something like that. I don't think it just because they say the prince had like feelings of, oh, I forgot how it didn't use the word love, it felt like affection
affection.
for her.
Yeah, affection.
Yeah, just because like he felt some affection doesn't mean like he probably did something terrible or like he was overcome by feelings of lust. It's like, and I don't know, she tries to make it seem like two opposing emotions couldn't be felt at the same time.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's still crazy to me.
right.
Yeah, that's actually like the worst sense of justification in this entire. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of bad ones, so maybe I can't say the worst. But
Yeah,
yeah, that's such a weird justification of trying to um make the rapist seem better than he actually is.
right.
Anyway,
And that's
sorry.
what Caddy's whole point is. Like, when you say stuff like that, like, trying to justify a rapist's actions, right? That's what you're doing. Like, you're literally exonerating the rapist of any crime that he committed. Like, you're literally making the crime less than what it really is, like a crime, right?
Mm.
So like, and so that's Caddy's whole point with her writing. Like, you can't do stuff like that with a rape text, a rape narrative in the Bible. You're only going that only leads to consequences, negative consequences on people who've been raped. So like, yeah. I'm gonna say this part too. I'm reading so much, man, Justin. This is ridiculous. Like, I hate doing this on videos, but it's for the grade. But
Yeah.
so Gordon Wyndham, meanwhile, describes Shechem as an affectionate young man whose love and affection for Dinah, expressed in verse 3, denotes precisely the right bond between a married couple. Yet these arguments seem only to exonerate Shechem's sexual assault and frame it in near romantic terms while implying that a person cannot be raped by somebody who loves them or wants to marry them. So these are Keady's words, and she's citing Gordon Renham, who thinks that Shechem and Dinah had a bond of a married couple, right? And so these are
Oh
just,
yeah.
yeah. So and this is Keady's whole point. So you can't do that with this account, like just make it a love story. So by treating Shechem sympathetically, so not taking his actions seriously, which took, seized, lay hold of, did his thing where like that's that there's not you don't have to force yourself on somebody you love. Like, it's gonna be received. And literally Ben, that's what we said the first time we talked about this, Justin, like with Lyn Bechtel. Like with her writing, she literally um glossed over the Hebrew words that were being used. Like, the words that were being used was force, seized, like it's stuff of just being physical with somebody when
Mm,
you don't have to be if it's love, right? So like,
right.
but like she used certain words to like try to prove her point, but like she neglected other Hebrew words and she just used the words, she interchanged words. So like she really omitted some words that were there and just focused in on, I don't know, it's like she made up a tale, like to like to like prove another side that possibly could be true, but it wasn't, because she totally omitted and neglected other words that were there in
Mhm.
the text in the original Hebrew. So like, yeah, it's crazy that her interpretation came up like that. But yeah, by treating Shechem sympathetically because of his love for Dinah, readers reinforce the common misperception which lies at the heart of rape cultures, that rape is first and foremost a sexual act driven by desire rather than by misogyny and violence, right? So this misperception can likewise be Her echoing in this statement, people's lives should not be ruined over 20 minutes of action. I thought about that earlier, Justin, when we first started the
Right.
video. Right. All right. So this remark erases the violence inherent within acts of sexual assault,
Um,
not to mention the devastating effects of these assaults on his victims by lauding Shechem as a man in love or Dinah's perfect partner. Readers of Genesis 34 likewise erase the violence of this duo's encounter in verse 2 and ignore the trauma it would have cost Dinah's character. Mm,
Something I liked that Katie brought up was like she used real words of rape victims as well to really
yeah,
contextualize contextualize this rape situation as well. And I like that quote you brought up. Like their entire lives are ruined from like 20 minutes.
right.
And it's like there how can you justify that? And it's like what Katie was bringing together too was like she had letters or situations of like the real rape victims to really show like it doesn't matter like the situation or what the other person was feeling, because there were court cases where the rapist was sympathized, but like I feel like no amount of sympathy changes what the woman felt as well. Like
Yeah,
what she feels is how she feels. And so I like that you have that quote up there. It's like the 20 minutes of like action ruining someone's life. Yeah, that perfectly encapsulates like the victim in the situation. Like no matter what the rapist was thinking, like what's done is done for the victim.
yeah. And that's Keddie's whole argument. Like, there's two ways of looking at the 20 minutes, right? Like, and it made me think about my favorite person of all time, like my favorite celebrity. I'm not gonna mention his name, but he was accused of rape. Um, and like because he is who he is, like nobody can believe it. So like, and if it is true, the people who really love him, like they'll say like 20 minutes shouldn't define his destiny. Like 20 minutes shouldn't dictate what y'all do with him. Like he's a good guy, right?
Mm.
So and then vice versa, like you said, like 20 minutes ruin somebody else's life. Like so, which one's greater? You know, and that's what people do. They pick a side and they roll with it.
Mm.
But which side is really oppressed? Which side is really suffering? Which side gets the negative consequences of that act? And going with my favorite person, like if you watch my YouTube channel, you guys know what I'm talking about. The person who accused the guy of rape, like her life completely changed. Like, and not in a good way either. Like, people literally give her death threats. Like, they talk crap about her. Like, man, you just want something. Like, you know, you just you you're just an awful person. Like, you know, because we know he wouldn't do something like that. You like so they beat her up, victim blaming. Yeah, that's what it is. Just like Keddie said, they victim blame the victim and pummel them even more and beat them up even more, you know, than what they already have been with the 20 minutes that negatively impacted them. So like, yeah, Keddie, like she makes you think. Like if you're doing that
Yeah.
when you're preaching a text, like you need to change the way you're interpreting it. You need to change the way you know you come across it and read it. Right? You can't bring those type of misogynistic and patriarchal thinking when you're reading the Bible. And what's crazy, it ain't just men doing it. Women do it too, right? Because some
Uh-huh.
people literally, like we were saying, like, you know, Dinah was asking for it. You know, Dinah put herself in that situation. Like we try to justify the we try to justify that's what's crazy.
Mm.
The awful event, the awful
Mm.
encounter. That does not glorify God. Right?
Mm.
And then we try to make it to where it glorifies God. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what
You're right. I
Kenny.
think that's
Yeah,
just human nature too. We all
yeah.
like if you get sick, you always try to find the reason like why you're feeling bad.
Hmm.
But yeah, you're all right. When we hear a story, I think it just makes us feel better sometimes. I feel like we can't process, and this is part of the church's problem because they don't want to talk about problems like that. But we don't want to face like the real issues that are going on.
Yeah.
I feel like when we try to justify it or find a reason for it, maybe we feel like a little bit better about it. Like,
Mm,
oh, something this terrible could never happen. It happened because Dinah did something, or like this
yeah.
happened.
Right.
Mm,
Right. Victim blaming, man. It's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I'm almost done actually, Justin. So, uh, Keady says on page 76, to insist that a narrative of rape is really a love story is to simply repeat and condone the violent act invoked therein. So you guys get it. So I'm gonna answer this question again. But let me go to slide 9. I know I ain't read that yet. Yeah. So, how does Keady's translation affect the reader's understanding on God, justice, gender, and scripture? So, gender dynamics. So, Keady translation interpretation for may foreground the gender dynamics inherent in the text by emphasizing Dinah's role and the implication of her victimization. Keady can eliminate the larger themes of female agency and the vulnerability within patriarchal society. So this focus can encourage readers to critically assess the portrayal of women in scripture and challenge narratives that perpetrate victim blaming or glorify female purity as a measure of worth. And how many churches glorify female purity? Like, there's nothing wrong. Like, we need to be pure,
Mm.
but like they they glorify it so much that they beat up on people who actually don't have it, and they neglect the people who don't have purity. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they throw them by the wayside and only focus in on the ones who are pure. And how many are those? Like, so like, man, like, Keady really calls out like, what to do at accounts like this. This is why it's so important to, talk about them, because like it makes you have uncomfortable conversations. So, how does Keady's translation affect readers' understanding of God, justice, gender, and scripture again? So, the ramifications of modern discourse, or the implications. So, Keady's work may bridge the gap between ancient texts and modern discourse on gender violence and rape culture by framing Genesis 34 within contemporary ethical discussions. She helps readers understand the ongoing relevance of such narratives and shaping attitudes towards women and violence today. Wow. So this connection can inspire critical reflection on how religious texts are interpreted in light of current social justice movements. So that's what I really appreciate about her text. I feel like, see, now that we talked about it some more, Justin, I feel like she did contextualize the text, but I
Mm.
feel like she modern dayized the text more. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, made it relevant for
Oh
today's
yeah.
time period.
I think
More
yeah,
than
that's
the
a good way to put it.
textual text. Yeah. So, yeah, I want to throw that out there. But here goes some good stuff too, guys. I'm gonna keep on going. Because Justin, I meant to say this at the very beginning of the video because you mentioned it. So this is a huge point right here. All right. So and this ain't really in the work. This is just something I got. So, you know, the concept of justice. So Keady's analysis brings attention to the complexities of justice depicted in Genesis 34. So by translating and interpreting the actions of Dinah, Shechem, and her brothers, Keady can illustrate the failures of the justice system in the ancient context. So in the ancient world, which often favored patriarchal values and familiar honor over individual rights and well-being. So this perspective can lead readers to question contemporary notions of justice, particularly regarding how justice is often administered in gender-based violence cases today. So that's the biggest conclusion with Keady's reading. Like, you know, like I said earlier, like the biggest revelation I got, like, if the church doesn't do it, don't expect the world to do it. So if
Mm.
the church don't see something
Mm.
as wrong, the world's not gonna see something as wrong.
That's
So
good.
like when yeah, so like when she contextualized the text or modern dayized the text, right? Like there's no justice for Dinah.
Yeah.
The men did not see this as wrong, and if they did, they saw it wrong for a different reason, not because Dinah was, violated. No, it's because the men were negatively impacted. It's because
Mm.
the men felt like, the other men in the society will disrespect us because our sister was raped, our daughter was raped. So it's all about how the men felt instead of, how does Dinah feel? What does Dinah
Mm.
have to say? Even the narrator participated in this, like
Yeah.
with how he wrote it. So like, because it was a he, right? So, so
Moses wrote. Moses got this right.
I
Who?
have,
Who
I
wrote
have
this
no
part?
idea, but they say like you still got different translators. So even Moses originally
Yeah.
wrote it,
Yeah.
somebody else wrote it, and somebody else wrote it, interpreted it. So like, yeah, it changed. Different scribes, that's what they call it. But yeah, guys, like the justice system, the concept of justice, like there's no justice in Genesis 34. Like, and
Mm,
you could say the Shechemites dying the way that they did was justice because, yeah, you don't want some traditional interpretation of it. You don't want Satan. What does Beelzebub have to do with Jesus? What does light have to do with darkness? Like, the
yeah.
Shechemites becoming one with the Israelites, like Simeon and Levi was used by God to like not let that happen. Like, but murder's still wrong. Like,
I'm not gonna lie. I thought Simeon and Levi were in the right
uh-huh.
uh for doing what they did until the Bible told me no, they weren't supposed to do that. I
Yeah.
guess that's more revenge than justice. Like killing off a whole tribe of people is probably not justice.
Hmm. Man, Justin,
Yeah,
I've
I
been
guess that's more on the revenge side.
right. Yeah, this is good, man. I've been reading
Yeah,
a lot.
there really is no justice in that chapter, is there?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we could say they were the justice, but they still took matter into their own hands. They did
They
it.
were vengeance.
Yeah.
I guess
So
that's different.
yeah, I'm almost done. I've been reading a lot, man. You got anything you want to say? I kind of want to use the bathroom while you talk.
Oh, yeah, I can talk while you use the restroom real
Yeah, go
fast.
ahead. Like, cause I mean, I've
Um,
been talking so much, man. Like this is weird.
yeah, no, I feel like every time you talk though, I feel like every time Sean talks,
I'm still here, by the way.
okay, yeah, I feel like every time Sean talks though, like I come up with something I come up with something that I didn't think about before. Like I read all this beforehand, but yeah, it's there is such a fine line of like where is where's the justice for Dinah, or like is there any justice in this excerpt? And that really does make you think, because you want to see like the wrong side punished, so you almost think that you need to side with Simeon and Levi. But we do have to remember, like, um that's not God's intention, that's not his plan. God is still able to use bad things for good, as we know in verses later on, which Sean mentioned that it might be good that those two tribes did not intermingle in the end. But I think a strong takeaway is that we do have to understand, like, like, this is a very person driven story as well. Like in the Old Testament, it's very easy to see like how tribes are affected, how communities are affected, which is kind of the context of Old Testament scripture regardless. It's like, how are God's people affected? But we do have to remember that any biblical story is very character driven as well. Like, even though we see what happens to the tribe of Israel in Genesis, we really see like the development of Moses and Aaron and Jacob and all these people that drive it. So it's very important to like understand like every character's motivation, or like how Dinah was affected. Like, even though the narrator themselves or himself um kind of glossed over Dinah because of like the culture back then, I really like some of the quotes and the readings that Sean had, because you really understand the drive of what happened to Dinah. And if you understand what happened to Dinah, you more understand the character drive for like Simeon and Levi. And because of that, you also see the the dilemma or the ultimatum that Jacob had to face. So each character drive feeds into another character drive and lets us understand like all the characters of it. And it's like that's always important for a Bible verse, because even though we can understand how the community is affected, and God really pushes on having a strong community for Christians, what I feel like we connect to the best is like individual characters. And I think that really emphasizes why we need to understand like Dinah's story, because it's like it's not something we need to gloss over. It's something that lets us understand, sheds light on our current situation as well, of like how we gloss over the victims of rape. Like, No, gosh, I need to wrap up here because I'm about to go into like a longer rant. But it's we've been bombarded with so much news nowadays on our phones, on TV, on social media that we kind of have been callous to it. We've been conditioned to it, I guess, is a very impersonal way of saying it. And it's like sometimes we may do the same for like characters like Dinah. We may gloss over her situation or just say that's just how the world works when God does not want that to be the way that the world works.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say too. I'm not gonna read nothing else, man. I'm gonna just talk because we're about to tear it up. Like we should have talked a long time ago, but I just have to make sure I cover everything with my class. But another
Yeah.
big revelation I got is like, who is the man of God in this context? Jacob. Like Jacob was literally God's man in this context. Like, and not just that, like we look at the men of God in the Bible and women of God in the Bible, like we look at them as heroes, and how they act is how we're gonna act, right? So
Yeah.
how did Jacob act in this text? God's man. He was passive. Like according to Lyn Bechtel, she thinks Jacob did the right thing by being passive, which which means he didn't act
Mm,
he didn't rush to act. He didn't act rashly. He did things cooperating with the community around him. So she saw that as a positive. But like a traditional reading on the text, how we traditionally interpret it, most people, they'll look at Jacob as not a hero in this story. Like he was passive. He didn't his daughter was raped, and what did he do? Nothing.
mm.
His sons did something.
Yeah.
And that says a lot.
That's why I thought Simeon and Levi were the good guys.
Right. And that's the whole point. Like, so like, um, if God's man didn't even act on this situation, if God's man didn't even
Mm,
he was passive about a wrong that happened to his daughter, that's what happens so much in our society. Like, uh a wrong happens to let's just focus on victims of rape in this situation, right? A wrong happens to a victim in rape. First thing we do, God loves you. I'm praying for you. Like we're passive about it, just like Jacob. Like so, it's crazy how much like this biblical text literally mirrors like how we act as a society when gender violence happens,
mm,
right? And I like how Keady's like saying like we need to do better. Like like there's so much more to be done. Like like stop taking the traditional approach because the traditional approach is only reinforcing harm, reestablishing victim blaming. Like it's only negative things going on when when you just are passive like Jacob about something like this, right? You got to act on it. So
mm,
yeah, these parts, if I read them, Justin, like it's really a really good conclusion
mm.
for Keady's work.
Yeah.
So like this is her solutions basically. So her solution is critical and meaningful interpretation so we don't reinforce women's suffering. So she says on page 72, without critical and meaningful interpretation of sexual violence contained within these biblical texts is often either ignored or reinscribed in contemporary reading communities. So as Esther, I don't know how to say that name, folks, insists readers' propensity to ignore the problematic and misogynistic discourse articulated within biblical rape texts and their interpretive traditions only reencodes the silence about women's oppression. So, yeah, so basically, I'm not even going to read all this. So she basically says we just need to be sensitive to rape and combat against rape in purity cultures. And then also we need to incorporate cultures so that we know, how we know what's really is being done in a biblical text, so that it's all the same stuff we've been saying. I'm gonna read this part to end it, but she said, as read on page 79, she said, as readers living in a global rape and purity cultures, we surely have a responsibility to context these discourses, both in biblical texts and within our own cultural locations. If scholars, clergy, and educators simply refer to biblical rape narratives, such as Genesis 34, as love stories filled with passion, romance, and seduction, or accept unquestionably the text's own insistence that Dinah is defiled by her rape. That yeah, okay. They risk perpetrating the harmful rhetoric that underpins many rape and purity cultures throughout the world today. All right, so it's saying all the same stuff we've been saying throughout the video. So like, I
Mhm.
really enjoyed this reading, man, because like it really pushed me not just to recognize rape, but recognize the ramifications or the what's the other word? But the implications that rape has on so many levels, right, in our lives, but especially in the church, right, so that we can do better, like for people who actually experience that, because that's the question. Like, so many, she said, so many rape victims don't feel heard. So many rape victims, they feel like they're silenced all the time. And so what's the point of speaking if nobody's gonna listen anyways? And they're just gonna reinforce harm again, like traumatize me some more. So like, what can we do? Like, you give them a space, like, so that they can let their voice, so they feel like their voices are heard. Oh, that's, it says it right here. Like, we're recognizing rape. All right, so I'm gonna read this part too. So on page 79, she said, this contemporary testimony, Genesis 34, invites us to remember the urgent necessity for all
Mm.
survivors' narratives, including ancient survivors such as Dinah, to be heard. Where testimonies such as this break the terrible silencing of rape survivors wrought by the shame and blame they so often encounter within rape and purity discourses, survivors who, like Dinah, are denied a space to let their voices be heard. So that's the question. Like, do we provide spaces where people feel like, people who are victimized by rape feel like they can be heard? Like, do you, the way you interpret scripture, like, and the way you read it, right, and the way you preach it and teach it, like, are you reinforcing harm or are you bringing healing? So that's why I want to do that story with you, Justin. Uh, um, the concubine Levite, the concubine that was raped. Um,
Oh, yeah. I,
because like, yeah, if we do that one, man, because like, it's providing a space for people who have experienced that. You know what I mean? Or
mm,
who lost family members or friends from that. You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
how many times do we actually talk about that and cover it, right?
I think it's always yeah. I think it's always good to do topics and videos that the church don't really go into as well. And to be fair, there's a lot of stories that would just be really difficult for the church to adjust. But yeah, I feel like those unheard stories or those tough issues really need to be heard. Because if people out in the world don't hear it from the church, where are they going to hear it from?
Right. And who better to hear it from than the church? Like, that's who
Yeah,
they should hear
absolutely.
it from. But from God, like, don't bring your own opinions and biases and stereotypes. And that's what I really appreciate about Keady's writing. Like, she literally, she literally like, it's not even, she literally names it, like, names, like, basically the stereotypes, the biases, like the problems of
Mm,
our not even our interpretations, but like the traditional, the main concepts and the main points of Genesis 34 that we all believe. Like, yeah, Dinah was raped. Like, most people believe that, but okay,
yeah.
it goes deeper than that. Like, but we just stop there. Like, and we think we did our job, like, of acknowledging it. But no,
Mm,
it's not just that, man. There's so much more work that needs to be done because
yeah.
that rape happened for a reason. Like, so yeah, I really can't wait to, like, that's my goal, Justin. I'm glad we got the same goal, man. I love talking about stories in the Bible that nobody else talks about, like,
Yeah.
and
It kind
going,
of forces me to like learn about them as
yeah,
well.
right. Like I really like talking about Dinah. I don't know how you, yeah, did you, I talked so much, Justin. I read so much. Like, how do you feel, bro? Like, you got anything else you want to say? You think we didn't
Man,
say?
I'm not gonna lie. Like, I read the pages that you gave, but a lot of my stuff came from bouncing off of you because you knew the material so much more that I didn't think about something until like you said it.
Oh, okay.
Same with the author. Katie did like such a good job of like I should reread it because she did such a good job of like making me think about how I contextualize stuff because
Mhm.
I didn't know I was guilty of like how our culture or how our society think and like I've kind of been raised to think a certain way without even realizing it. So she
Right.
did a really good job of doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's my goal, guys. Like anytime we do a video, that's my goal. Like I'm trying to try to paint the Bible in a way that you haven't seen it before, and I get that a lot in my readings I do for seminary school. So it's for seminary school. So that Jessica M. Keady's reading, like, it was one of my favorites that I read in all of seminary school, but definitely for this class. So
Mm.
yeah, and I'm always hit you guys with more videos like that. So Justin, you good? I'm about to end the video if you're good.
I think so. Yeah. I feel like you picked out some really good um readings to go over, so I think I'm good.
All right, cool. So guys, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do, man. We got way more videos for you guys, man. Way more stuff you can watch. So here go all my social media platforms, best social media platforms ever. So make sure to go to my Facebook page, Sean Christopher Jenkins, and then go to Justin's Facebook page. Let me go back. Justin's Facebook page, Justin Lee Howe, and befriend us on there, and send us a DM if you got any questions. We'll love to do a video on the questions that you ask us. Justin, we got a lot of questions to answer on videos, by the way. All right,
Mm.
so Upload Past Crossroads, that's my YouTube channel. Justin's YouTube channel is Chaplain's Log, right? So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. After you subscribe, click the bell so you're notified anytime we upload another video, we go live, make a post or whatever, right? And we're always going to be doing that. So on my YouTube channel, this is our 568th video, all right? And if you scroll down, we got a whole lot of playlists to so you can get way more of a feel for and watch way more content of what you want and love. So if you enjoyed me, watching me and Justin together, just go to this playlist or this section on my YouTube channel, our podcast, or scroll all the way down and you'll see Justin's YouTube channel, Chaplain's
Mm.
Log. But he has a playlist on my YouTube channel just titled his name, Justin Lee Howe. So this is our 119th video, Justin, by the way. All right,
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah, so check out that, man. We done a lot of videos together. I already know. Now that I know he's gonna be doing videos with me, even though he has a kid and I have a kid now. Like we're gonna be hitting you guys with way more videos, all right? And so if you enjoy me just talking about stuff from seminary school, you want to learn way more things from a literary perspective when it comes to the Bible, check out this playlist. Like you'll hear a lot of deep discussions, man, that you don't really get in the church or any other setting. All
Mm.
right. I love it so much, right? If you enjoyed us breaking down this book, you can hear us break down even more books. Me and Justin actually do that a lot together. So check out this
Oh, yeah.
book breakdowns and book reviews. And then if you enjoyed us talking about Dinah, you can hear way more sermons, Bible studies, just whatever that I plan on doing with Dinah on my YouTube channel. And then also Genesis chapter 34. So, all right, guys. So that's the video, man. I pray you guys enjoyed it, man. You have a great one. All right. And we hit you guys with this is a lot of content. This is probably
That
like,
was a lot
so
because we had a second video too.
yeah. So we'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.
Yeah.